when I was thinking about this episode and writing this episode, I didn't have a story for it immediately, and no one had written in yet with their own story. But as luck and providence would have it, thinking of recording it this morning, the perfect intro for this episode found its way to me via Instablog. Some person on Twitter, I believe it's Twitter, had called out Davido, essentially insulting him and telling him, talking about him not having self-esteem because he's always going after women. And then this person's ex, I believe ex-wife or maybe current wife, I don't know, called out her husband for calling out Davido because he was essentially doing the exact same thing. And then somewhere in this entire mix, one of the women that the husband was dating, or the boyfriend was cheating on his wife with, his wife had reached out to her, and she lovingly, because I read everything and it didn't look like, she wasn't rude, she wasn't like, oh, stay away from my man. No, she just said, see, young girl, let me advise you, this is what this guy is doing, you're gonna get hurt, whatever. And the young lady, having, being equipped with that information, decided to carry on with the guy, right? She decided to carry on with the guy, and in carrying on with him. So now it was not a situation of her not knowing that this person she's with is actually married and cheating and all of that. It now became a situation of, oh, okay, so when are you going to leave your wife? That's going to take us very smoothly into this week's discussion. So let's get into today's episode.
Does she like me? Was that a date or a hang? Is she single? Wait, what are we? Is it too soon to say I love you? Should I call him now or should I just wait? Maybe I should wait. Wait, should I let her go? Why did he just ghost me like that? Wait, can't we work it out? Is he an F-boy? Is she toxic? We hooked up. Why is he saying we're just friends? Let's face it. Relationships are the best thing when they work and a nightmare when they flop. You're recklessly giddy when Cupid's arrow sticks you in the ass, and a nervous, pain-filled wreck when he comes to take his love away. There's hardly anyone who cannot relate to the dizzying highs and debilitating lows of relationships. We are naturally wired for connection, so when that's messed with, it can make us feel crazy. Enter Bambazeled. On this show, we help you figure out if you are being bamboozled by your bae. That's it. Nothing else, nothing fancy, just a real, raw, honest to heavens, and hopefully helpful take on the best to the worst of relationships and everything on the spectrum in between. No topic is off limits, no situation is too taboo or embarrassing. Give us everything. So, if you're wondering if you're being bamboozled by your bae, don't walk, run here. This is your new home. I am your new bestie, and I've got you. Now, let's figure out if you're being bambazeled.
All right. Hi. Welcome, beautiful people. It is so good to have you here, and thank you for rocking with your girl. I always have to say thank you because it means so much to me that you guys are here with me. All right. I promised about 2 episodes ago that we were going to talk about types or trauma. Now, I'm going to give a very, very important disclaimer that this is in no way, I'm not talking specifically about the situation that is happening. I used it as an example of the stuff that goes on in real life, because this is on the blogs, right? People can see this happening. But the truth of the matter is that this is very reminiscent or reflective of people's actual real lives. And so I'm not going to be talking about the particular people in this story. However, I'm going to use the story as a reference point for talking about how many times, especially when we find ourselves in repetitive patterns that are destructive and painful to us, that it is most likely we are going for our trauma and calling it our type. Okay, so we all know that there are people who have been in, currently are in, are intending to be in relationships where they are consistently bashed, broken, hurt, undervalued, all of that stuff. We all know the terms. You have a sister like that, a friend like that, even an enemy like that. But we know that there are relationships where you're wondering to yourself, how in the world did this person, how is this person with this person? Why? And why did they stay? And why haven't they left? And when are they going to realize that they should leave? Can they not see that this person is bad for them? And somehow, unfortunately, sometimes this even goes as far as people being in domestic violence situations where it hurts me to say that, situations where they end up being harmed past the point of recovery. And unfortunately, they have to exit this planet because of the harm that they endured, right? And we ask ourselves, why did this person stay? Why didn't she leave? Why didn't he leave? And please, by the way, I'm going to say that I think I said this when I started this show, that this show is equal opportunity bashing. Men are going to get it, women are going to get it. The person who gets it is the person who was doing the wrong thing. So if it happens to be a guy, we're going to bash the guys. But ladies, if it happens to be us, we're going to bash ourselves as well, because the point of this show, the reason I am doing this, and I want to believe other people in this relationship space that are trying to speak on the possibility of healthy, whole, meaningful relationships, it's because we are trying to move the needle away from the extreme that it seems to have landed on. Obviously, I'm talking about like the physical transactional swamp that relationships have become, where it's just give me money, give me money, I give you body, give me body, I give you money, and all of that trash. Okay, so let's get quickly into today's episode. So we're leave Davido, leave the cheating, philandering guy, leave even his wife. We're not even talking about those guys. We're not even talking specifically about the lady who decided to stay with him and now moved from the place of saying, oh, I didn't know he was married, to, okay, now I know he's married, but I'm asking him, when is he going to leave his wife, right? So we're talking about what she represents, not her personally. So we would assume she doesn't know. We would assume that, when we are in relationships with bad people, or when we are in relationships with people who hurt us, or people who are doing wrong by us, or people who are misusing us, we don't know or have the information required to leave. That's the assumption that we make, right? There's no way this person can know that this guy is a cheat. There's no way this person can know that this guy is violent. There's no way this person can know that this person is a narcissist. There's no way this person can know this person is toxic. There's no way this girl can know that this guy has mommy issues. There's no way. Pile all of the information that we don't have on. And so we assume that we stay, right? Because of a lack of information. What do we now make of it when we have the information of this person? We have the information either via being told or experiencing it firsthand, because this person has shown us that they are violent. They have, and I was saying, this doesn't only apply to women. There are men who are also sadly experiencing domestic violence. There are men who are being used, misused, mistreated. There are men who are being preyed upon. This covers human beings, right? So what do you do, or what do you say when a person is aware and still stays? They're aware of the damage that's being done to them, and they still stay. They are aware of the pain that is being caused. They are aware, they can feel it, but they don't leave. Or when they do leave, you find that the next relationship they get into, it almost feels like they got into the relationship with the same person, just that different height, different name, he wears different perfume. But it's the same guy, or she's the same lady. This is what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to read, obviously, I write these episodes, so I'm going to read part of the intro. Many people, especially in my country, Nigeria, are traumatized. Yes, we've survived it. We've thrived in spite of it, but that doesn't mean it hasn't left indelible marks on our psyches. Everything we believe and therefore behave comes from something or somewhere else. Do you know that there is nothing like an original belief? Not anymore. I'll explain why I said that. The thoughts that we have, though they may be ours, did not originate from us. Essentially, everything we believe is influenced by the environment we have been in, by the lives that we have had, by the people we have interacted with, by the pain, by the pleasure, by the progress, but the sum total of the influences that we have had in our lives. So what we believe can be individual to us, but guess what? There are many other people that believe the same thing. So it's not an original, exclusive belief to you. My point is, we are all who we are by the influences that we've had in life, whether good or bad. We like to talk about the good parts, like school. Education has a huge impact on us. It has a huge impact on our lives and the way we think and the expansion of our minds. We like to talk about things like church. For those of us that are Christian, if you're of other faiths, we talk about the mosque, we talk about the Quran, we talk about if you believe in other religions, like you're a traditionalist or you're a Buddhist or whatever it is you are. But when it's time to talk about the bad parts, the bad influences that we have had in our lives, for instance, like being made to feel like you had to earn your parents' love if you grew up with narcissistic parents or toxic parents. And I'm slowing down because this is something we never want to talk about. And can you blame us? Every child wants their parent to be superheroes. In fact, to babies, to little children, until they come to the ability to separate God from their parents. Our parents are God to us. That's just the truth. They are God. They are all. Because that's what we came and met. So if your all gives you a love that is all encompassing, and become love. If your all gives you a love that is conditional, inconsistent, fear-based, withdrawn from you, if your all neglects you, then you become someone who is incomplete, neglected, inconsistent, conditional. You see yourself as receiving or deserving only based on the condition of fulfilling something. In other words, I receive love when I am good. So I have to perform my goodness in order to receive love. Yeah? All right. So we don't want to talk about things like narcissistic parents, especially in Nigeria. Because again, like I said in the last episode, there's a convergence of culture and religion. And it has muddied up the waters where things like abuse, things like trauma, things like what is right and wrong for a parent to do, they don't find a place in this sludge of religion and culture. So your parent, because your parent is second only to God, there is a way that we cannot question them, and there's a way that we cannot take them to task, and there is a way that we cannot hold them accountable. Because imagine growing up being told that when you honor your mother and your father, your life will be long, you will live longer. Who doesn't want to live long? Who wants to die on like early? So when you hear things like that, coupled with the honoring of your mother and father looking a heck of a lot like the complete and total abandonment and dishonoring of yourself, you have a generation or generations of people who live a life where, for really until they're probably married, and sometimes even after they're married and leave their parents' house, they live their life for their parents. They live their lives for mom, and they live their lives for dad. Mommy's approval, daddy's acceptance. We're living our lives with the desperate fear of being rejected by mom and dad. So we run away from talking about things like that because it questions and shakes the very core of who we are and who we have come to think or believe we are. These are the tenets that our entire lives have been built on. In fact, I have this theory, or I'm of the opinion, that many Nigerians have three gods. Our first God, and you guys are not going to like this, is money. For most of us, our first God is money. We worship money like, listen, Nigerians have a deeper fear of poverty than the hell that we have been told exists, where the devil lives, and if you do certain things you will go there. And you have people doing those things with the thought in mind that I'm going to go there, but they would rather go there than live life poor. I'm not laughing, poverty is not a joke. But it tells you really that though we sing Hosanna, Hosanna, worship to the highest, and all of the things that we say about God, it seems like we have a bigger God, and the first one is money. The second God we have, our parents. And then the third God is the God of the Bible. Now, for those of us who have been fortunate enough to break out of this mold, or fortunate enough to never have had to be in it, because by the grace of God, by mercy, we grew up with parents who were not, we grew up with parents who had some measure of self-awareness, or we grew up we grew up in a way where we had some bit of privilege, right? The sensibilities are a little bit different. But in general, Nigerians have, in my opinion, have three gods: money, parents, God of the Bible. We will listen to money before we listen to God. We will listen to our parents before we listen to God. And then we will listen to God third, if it comes to that. We refuse to see our parents as people. We refuse to see our parents. And now when I say the word parents, parents should be used in this context as any person who has stood in a position of authority as a guardian, someone who is older than you and has had influence on you. So these are your teachers, this is your church, these are your actual parents, these are your family members, your grandma, your father, your uncles, your aunties, your cousins. So when I say parents, please think about it in terms of what the word parent means, which is supposed to be as a steward. So the people who have served as influences in your life. That's what I mean. Yeah. So we refuse to see our parents as people who were capable and, in fact, sometimes were the major source of some of our deepest, most painful wounds. Religion tells us not to talk about it or we'll go to hell. Culture tells us not to even dare think of it because then we are bad children and then our own children will be our karma. When you hear things or statements like, don't worry, Shebi, you will have your own children one day. When they start disrespecting you the way you are disrespecting me, you will remember this day. No, don't worry, keep disrespecting your mother, keep dishonoring me, don't worry, Shebi, you will have children. When you hear things like that, that is the implication. Warnings like these are usually given or they come after said parent has deeply offended their child. And the child, or even adults, because we have a lot of adult children that are locked in the past room that their parents locked them in and refuse to allow them mature emotionally past the rest of their lives. So you have people that are 45 who have the emotional age of a 13-year-old or 10-year-old. Deeper conversation there, we'll have it another day. But this happens after the parent has deeply offended the child or their adult child, and that child or that person had the audacity to speak on it. And so we learn not to take accountability for our shit, for our mess ups, for the wrong things that we do, because guess what? Our parents never had to. And if we ever had the guts or the effrontery to call them out, we were met with terrible consequences. Consequences of manipulation, because some parents might not hit, but they will manipulate your emotions and make you feel guilty for trying to hold them accountable, make you feel like a bad child. So either being manipulated, being punished, having love withdrawn from you, being hit or beaten, being threatened with consequences such as not living long because you are not honoring your parent who is steady dishonoring you. So why does this spiel I've just given about our environment, our influences, how we grew up, how our parents treated us, whether we were emotionally neglected? And here is the thing, a lot of people kick against these kinds of conversations because their parents sent them to school, they paid your school fees, they kept food on the table, you traveled for summer, they gave you pocket money, right? But they also didn't know who the heck you were because they couldn't be bothered to spend time with you, to actually know you. If you were sat with your mom or your dad, the conversation was always about mom or dad. It wasn't about you. And if it ever was about you, it came in way of criticism. It was criticizing something that you have done. When you're bad or when you make a mistake, you are bad. When you do something good, they take the credit for it. So if you pass your exams, for instance, you have a father who is very toxic or narcissistic or self-centered, which let's be kind and say that even narcissists or toxic people or whatever, they are at their core just people who are deeply hurt. I know it's not popular because everybody wants to hate on narcissists, but this is the truth. And so when you do something good, instead of your father or mother or sibling or whoever the major influence in your life is, to attribute the good you have done to you, they take credit for it. Oh, she's like me. When she's tidy, she's like me. When she's intelligent and smart, she's like me. That's the me in her. When she makes a mistake, however, that hand is released off of you and you're on your own. That's you. So with your parent is the only time that you are good. And when their hand is off you, The real you that is really not that good or good enough is the one that makes mistakes and blunders. And do you see how that conditioning has already started happening from childhood? Your kid gets an A or gets a B, and instead of you to say, "Well done, you got a B, I'm proud of you," you say, So who got A in the class now? So who now got A? Okay, so the person that got A has two heads. Abby? How about well done for the effort you put in. I know that when you put your mind to things, you can do amazing things. And this is an example of that. I cannot wait to see how much more you do when you apply yourself even more. It's not about me, the parent. It is about the child and their achievement and their hard work and what they bring to the table. So, we talked about all of this because the brain is wired to seek out the familiar, because that is one of the ways it conserves its energy. Now, all of this is going back to the point that the people we date, the people we are attracted to, sometimes, especially if it is someone who causes us hurt and pain, if you trace it properly, that person is almost an exact replica of the parent that wounded you the deepest. And what you're trying to do, or what your brain is trying to do, not even your brain, what that wound is trying to do is it's looking for a way to heal, because it is a deep wound and it's a wound of the identity. And so it's trying to prove to your parent, who is not the person you're dating, that I am worthy of your love. So if I date someone that talks to me the way my parent did, yells at me the way my parent did, ignores me the way my parent did, chastises me the way my parent did, criticizes me the way my parent did, if they're everything like my parent, only that I have the added bonus of being able to do with them and I can win them over, then I am finally good enough for that first person that rejected me. I know it's deep, but it's true. And so I was talking about the brain. The brain is wired to seek out the familiar because our brain's ultimate, listen, your brain's number one focus, number one, not nothing, is ensuring that its host, which is this body, this thing, its host remains alive for as long as possible, because without the host, the brain ain't got no home and it has nowhere to live, and it needs somewhere to live. So its primary function is to create processes and systems that will ensure the longevity of this thing, its host. And one of the ways it does that is by conserving energy, because it takes energy to keep this alive. That is the reason why we don't learn things. There are certain things that when we learn them once, we've learned it. So, from the day we are born, our brain gets to work and it is looking at its environment and it is learning, this is safe, this is not safe, this is good, this is not good. This adds to this person's well being, this takes away from their well being. The things that add, I'm going to keep. The things that take away, I'm going to get rid of. Even if the things that add might not be beneficial, like alcohol, for instance. What's behind alcoholism? You have people who are trying to numb out pain. The brain doesn't want you to feel pain because pain drains your energy. So your brain learns via observation, which is why we are mirroring creatures. I watch my mom, I watch my dad, I watch the people around me, I watch what they're doing, and I am picking up that information. I know that this is what walking looks like. Oh, I know that this is what crying looks like. I know that's one of the ways we learn. It learns by experience. Oh, I touched that thing, it hurt me. Oh, this hurts. I ate that thing, I liked it. Yum, I like it. I keep that. So all these things that are, and the brain is doing this. You can't even calculate the amount of speed that the brain is doing all these things in. And your brain is storing all of this information in your subconscious mind, because that is one of the ways it saves energy. So I don't have to wake up every day and figure out how to breathe. My brain has stored that information somewhere. I don't have to wake up every day and learn how to eat. Once I have learned how to eat, I know how to do it. The way your brain stores good information, useful, beneficial information, it's the exact same way that it stores bad information. So, yes, we are all traumatized. When you think about trauma, we all think, no, I'm not traumatized. Nothing happened to me. I had a great childhood, blah, 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 blah. Shut up. That is not the case. Trauma is not just you were in a war and bombs were going off. Trauma is not just that you were in a car accident. Trauma is not just that you were, you were physically assaulted. That is trauma. But those are the things that we would call big T traumas. In psychology, that's what you call big T traumas. And so when we think trauma, we think, oh, I never had any of that, so I'm not traumatized. Until you realize that you cannot hold on to relationships, that you always fight with everybody, that you have a control issue, you have depression, until you realize that you have all these other things, even though you had a seemingly perfect childhood, and you don't know why. The reason is because there are things called small t traumas. And small t traumas are the more subtle but chronic things that happen that affect us just as deeply, if not even deeper. What do I mean? If you were always teased, let's say you were let's say you were a kid who maybe didn't learn to talk as fast as others. And because of that, you were always teased. And maybe when you came back, your auntie or your uncle or the house help or your siblings, unfortunately, some people, even your parents, they always teased you about your inability, your speech impediment or defect. Do you know that that is traumatizing? Anything that makes you seem or feel less than in any way, happening consistently, and you don't have a means of escape or a means of defense to counter that thing, and it causes you pain or distress, is trauma. Neglect is trauma. You have a lot of men who are in relationships with women right now, and they may have a lot of money, but they do not know how to emotionally connect with them. You have women who don't know how to emotionally connect with men because they grew up in homes where nobody emotionally connected with them. They're physically present, they are mentally present, so we can have intellectual conversations, but we cannot connect here. I cannot feel you. I can see you though. We can have some good sex. We can travel together. But we can't have a conversation about each other without this other person really not knowing what to do, because this is something that is new to them. This is why I started this conversation from our environments and where we grew up and how we grew up and why it is so important. This is why our environments matter. We're about to get into the meat of it. Because the brain is expending energy to form neural pathways that will be the control room of all the things you do, think, believe, like, dislike, want, desire, are afraid of, and who you Your brain is forming neural pathways based on every experience that you have ever had, however minute. You might consciously, in your conscious mind, not recall, but your brain has stored it somewhere. If you want to have an idea of how the brain works and how it's divided between your conscious and your subconscious mind, think about the Titanic. The Titanic saw the tip of the iceberg and looked at the size of itself and said, "Are you kidding? That's not a thing." We were like, "That's not even a thing. Compared to us, that's nothing." It did not, however, see the monstrous, mammoth, just block of just destruction that was underneath the surface. Your conscious mind is above the surface, and it is that small little tip of the iceberg. Your real mind is that big, massive thing that ripped the Titanic apart. That is your subconscious mind. And it is very powerful. And it is where who you are, that's where it is stored. And so sometimes you find yourself doing things that you're like, how did I know to do that? There was a time in your life where that information, you became privy to that information. Your brain stored it in your subconscious mind. Now you are in a situation where you have to face something similar. Without thinking, boom, the brain goes into activation, goes through the files. I have this somewhere. Oh, there it is. That's what she needs to do. And you do it. If we think about our brains like this, you would be way more interested. You would be less interested in knowing what is above the surface and figuring out what is in this monster underneath, because it can literally rip the figurative Titanic that is your life to shreds. If what is in there happens to be destructive, if what is in there happens to be negative, destructive programming. So, the way your good creates neural pathways, your neural pathways are like the highways of your mind. Bad experiences and bad environments also form their own neural pathways. And since the brain seeks out the familiar, guess what? When you're meeting different people to partner with, as you've now become an adult, who do you think will be the types you go for? Because remember, we're talking about types or trauma. Who do you think will be the types of people you go for? The ones that are most familiar to your psyche, or the ones that are very alien to your psyche? Knowing that the brain seeks out and usually, if not forced to divert or pivot, goes for the familiar. What happens if your psyche's pathways around love, relationships, intimacy, loyalty, companionship, self-esteem, sex, all of those things, etc.? What happens if they were formed from bad experiences? The bad experiences you witnessed with your parents, for instance, if maybe they were always fighting, yelling, if one parent was a bully and the other parent was a coward or would cower to that parent. And this is not, I'm telling you, there are women who bully the men. I've seen it. If there was a lot of manipulation in the home, if there was a lot of gaslighting in the home, if there was a lot of devaluing, a lot of criticism around those things, because you learn about relationships from the relationships that you have experienced. That's the only place you learn about them. So what happens if the experiences you witnessed in your parents or your environment, or from sometimes the unfortunate circumstances that you now happen to pass through along your journey in life, like, unfortunately, being sexually harassed, sexually violated, being molested as a child? What happens when your psyche around things like self-esteem and acceptance were built on the basis of performance? So when I do great in school, mommy's happy with me, daddy's happy with me. When I don't, when I'm not the first, when I'm not better than everybody else, I receive less love, I receive less acceptance, I receive less warmth. Do you see why asking your child if the person who came first has two heads is not the discipline and parenting flex that we think it might be? Or what if you are forced to perform for attention? I've met people who are attention seekers. They need to be at the center of attention. If they are not, they cannot, they are not, they can't be okay if the spotlight is not on them. And sometimes people like this can be a little bit, they can grate on the nerves. And just like, can you just go and sit down somewhere and I beg. But most times people like that, they are seeking out the attention that they never got, that they were entitled to from their parents. And now, because here is the thing, we are who we are. Human beings, we are who we are. And our needs, if those needs don't get met the right way, best believe we will find a way to get them met, even if it is in the wrong way. And this is when you start talking about things like personality disorders, toxic behavior, attention seeking, etc., etc. Is the pathways of your mind, your neural pathways, the highways, they were built on conditional love, neglect. People don't talk to you, you get the silent treatment, people mock you, people laugh at you, all of those kinds of things. Then all the potential partners that come your way, which of them do you think you will gravitate to more? Remember, we're talking about types, because a lot of us, we talk about, oh, this guy is my type, oh, this is my type of person. And most of the time, when we're talking about a type, if you want to know who a person's parent is, sit down and listen to them talk about the type of partner they want to be with. Good or bad? Good or bad? A home where the father was present, was emotionally available, emotionally mature, emotionally open and vulnerable. You have daughters who are not, they're not carrying this hatchet on their head like men are scum. Do you know why men are not scum to them? Because the first example of a man that they had was not scum. Do you remember what I said at the beginning? That we don't have any original belief, that all our beliefs and thoughts about life come from somewhere? This is what I meant. So, even if good people come to you, you will discard or dispose of the good people. If your psyche's belief about relationships was built on the foundation of pain, shame, hurt, criticism, etc. When you meet someone who will not shame you, who will not criticize you, who will love you unconditionally, who wants the best for you, your brain does not resonate with that. And so this is going to be very alien and very weird to you. And if, unfortunately, your belief about yourself, one of the beliefs that was planted in you is that you are not worthy of unconditional love, when someone comes to give you unconditional love, you will throw it away. You will give it away because you believe that you don't deserve this. All of this is not happening in your conscious mind. It's all happening in the real part of your mind, your subconscious. That's why sometimes you find people who, you're like, how in the heck did you mess this up? How did you fumble this girl? How did you fumble that guy? And it doesn't make any sense. Sometimes that is what is behind it. The subconscious controller, the real person in control, didn't think they deserved that person. And so they had to find a way to get rid of them. So, of all the potential partners that come your way, you will gravitate, and probably, like I said, if you haven't taken time to do work on yourself, become self-aware, grow out of your negative patterns and beliefs, you will probably attach more to the one that resonates with that neural pathway in your brain. Here's the kicker. You will do this even when this person or this type of person you keep going for is clearly bad for you and hurts you to no end. If you're sitting down and crying every night and you break up with this person, if you have the strength to do it, the next person you date will be another version of that person if you do not heal yourself. You will pick them time and time again because they are familiar to your brain. Most of what we call our type, especially when the people we keep partnering with hurt us badly, is actually our trauma. You're picking the trauma of rejection because you were rejected. You're picking the trauma of neglect because you were neglected. You're picking the trauma of being belittled because you were belittled. You're picking the trauma of being laughed at and mocked when you have a partner who you get dressed and you've worn something that you think you look beautiful in, and this bozo, guy or girl, looks at you and says, "You're gonna wear that?" And they walk away and dump that shit inside you, and you sit there for the rest of the day. And when you started out on a high, like, oh, I think I look pretty, I think I look handsome, all of a sudden that person just takes you back down to your internal level, which is, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. With one statement, they take you right back down there. Common sense, which is conscious sense, tells you to leave. Real sense, which is your subconscious, will keep you there because that is what exists and resonates with that part of you. Now, we push people who are actually good for us away, not because there is actually anything wrong with them, but because they are a stranger to the world of our frame of reference to what relationships should be. And I'll say again, that frame of reference for what relationships should be was determined by what we experienced as kids and even young adults. What we consistently, that's the important thing, consistently experienced during our formative years. Some people would rather run after and beg a man or woman to please love them and stay in the relationship with them because that is the framework they have of what relationships should be. Their relationship with their significant other at the time, which was their parent, was one where they were consistently begging for love. And when you're begging for love, it's not you're saying, oh, mommy love me, oh, daddy love me. No. You're begging for love when you cook for your parents. You cook, you slave away to make them something. Now, the reason you will even slave away in the first place is because you're already looking for approval. You have been primed and conditioned to look for the approval. So where you would cook food and take 15 minutes, when you're cooking it for the person who disapproved of you the most, you will use that same 15 minutes food, you cook it for 3 hours because you want it to be perfect, because everything you do with regards to that person is a bid for that approval that they never gave you. It's a bid to get that approval. So the way you dress, your achievements, your goals, how hard you work, how the person you choose to be in a relationship with, if mommy doesn't like them, to hell with that person. If dad doesn't like them, to hell with that person. Even if you love them, even if they make you happier than anyone has ever made you. If you haven't healed that wound of rejection from your parents or from your place of origin, you will throw that person away. So some people have witnessed their parents, witnessed the media, witnessed from culture, that they are not deserving of, and I said it in the last episode, and I'm going to keep saying it, excellent treatment. Because they are not deserving, they have to work extra hard to get it. And even if they don't get excellent treatment, they will work extra hard to keep the breadcrumbs of the bread that is excellent treatment. Again, this also stems from your childhood environment. If you were treated as an object or a tool for your parents' aggrandizement, for their pleasure, to regulate their own nervous system, because let me tell you, gosh, this is a bigger conversation. Many parents or older people use people who are younger than them or people who are not in the same position of power as them as emotional regulators, where we are supposed to be our own emotional regulator. So, I am angry. Something has happened. It has nothing to do with this child. It has nothing to do with this member of staff. It has nothing to do with my sister. It has nothing to do with this other person. But because I haven't learned how to emotionally regulate myself and be responsible for my own feelings, because if I cannot take accountability when I'm wrong, I also haven't learned to hold my own feelings and be accountable or responsible for those either. So guess what? I come and take this storm that is brewing inside of me. And what do I do with it? I look for the nearest person that is in a position of less power. So this can be a child, this can be somebody that works for you, this can be your friend, this can be your partner, and I pour it on them. And as I am pouring out all of that bile onto them, let's say I was high up here and angry, and this is equilibrium, this is your nervous system at the space that it's supposed to be in. As I'm pouring it, then I'm coming back to homeostasis. I'm coming back to equilibrium. But guess what is happening to that person that I am pouring on? They are now becoming dysregulated. They are now in a state of emotional pain or emotional distress because I couldn't deal with my own emotional distress. I have gone and transferred it to them. So children are used as their parents' emotional regulators all the time, and it is wrong. Children are not strong enough to carry that responsibility. Their brains are not expanded enough to be able to separate themselves from their parents or their sense of worth from their parents' behavior. And if you are using them as the thing to calm yourself down, then they see themselves as objects, not whole people. And if you don't see yourself as a whole person, how in the heck are you supposed to know how to see other people as whole? If you see yourself as an object because your parent made you their object, you are going to treat other people like objects. Facts. So, they learned, these kids who are now adults, learned and formed the pathway in their mind that they are not worth very much outside of serving a function for another person. And it is only when that person acknowledges you that your value becomes apparent to you. Outside of that person's acknowledgement of your value, it doesn't exist to you. So when you are not acknowledged by other people, your sense of self is shaken. And for some people, depending on how deep this wound goes, it's shaken to the very core. This is when you see people acting the fool, like doing things that you're just like, what is wrong with this person? This is why some people develop unhealthy attachment styles. And with that being said, I'm going to bring this episode to a close. And next week, we will talk about attachment styles. So, if you recognize yourself in any of the things that I have talked about, that we've talked about today, and you want and you want to begin to work on rebuilding your neural pathways, unlearning the negative programming that has put you in a place that says, I am not worth much unless someone else acknowledges my worth, for instance, or I am not good enough, or I am only in existence to please someone else. All of those things, right? If you find that you deal or struggle with this, I have a list of suggestions that might be able to help. Number 1, get therapy. Get therapy. And if you cannot afford therapy or there is no access to therapy where you are, get connected to people who represent the styles and ways of thinking and processing and living and existing that are different from yours. Where you can see the benefits of another person's way of living or thinking, especially in contrast to yours, where maybe you keep fighting with people, you keep falling out with friends, you don't have a stable sense of self, you need use other people to regulate regulate your emotions or your nervous system, low self-esteem, you keep going after partners that hurt you, all of that stuff. Look for someone who is doing life in the way that you wish you were doing life, and connect with them. If you cannot connect with them personally, shadow their lives, learn about them, watch and understand. The point is, you need to introduce new information to your mind so consistently enough that your brain begins to dig out a new neural pathway for that aspect of your life to function on. Because you can't do it by yourself. You cannot unlearn character traits or behavior traits in a vacuum. You must have something, new information, to replace the old information. Otherwise, the old information will refill the void you've created trying to uproot it if you do not fill it with new information. The filling of your mind with new information is not something you do once. It's not one YouTube video. It's not one prayer. It's not one deliverance for those of us who, believe that it's a matter of deliverance. It is consistently going at it. It is consistently insisting that even though this is how I have always been, I see the negative impact it has on my life and on the lives of others, and I want to change. So I am going to consistently refeed and retrain my mind until the subconscious part of me becomes different. And at that point, I won't have to train my mind anymore, because we all know that's how the subconscious works. It works in autopilot. So whatever you have programmed it with is what it will manifest in your waking or daily life. Number 2, be willing to look deep under the water to see the rest of the iceberg. Your subconscious mind is so powerful, and it literally controls the major things in your life. Isn't it worth interacting with and spring cleaning every now and again? For something so important, for something so that important, that has that much sway and control over you. Sometimes you find yourself doing things, you're like, why do I keep doing this? I don't like doing it, but I keep doing it. Subconscious mind. For something that important, isn't it worth investing time and energy and focus in? I think it is. Number 3, embrace change before your refusal to grow stunts your life permanently. I think that there's always a second chance. I think that there's always hope. That's the way I'm wired. It's hard for me to give up on things. But I also know that there is a time frame in which if you don't do what you need to do, the ship will pass you by. Life will pass you by. And there will be so much damage that even the thought of undoing all the damage is so draining that you just sit and wallow in the rubble that your life has become, because you've spent your days destroying it, and people have left you or walked away from you, or you have attached yourself to someone who is destroying your life. Dismantle your ideas of a type of person, that I have to be with this type of person. You should be more willing instead to embrace a type of experience. If you shift your focus from the type of person to the kind of experience that I want to have of love, we would have way better relationships. It would be easier to love and it would be easier to live. So it doesn't have to be this person. If it's not you, I won't die. But what happens with a lot of us is it because of the desperation that is planted in us when we've been rejected and whatever, it's like, oh, I have to hold on to this person, I have to hold on to this person. But if you focus on an experience, so I want to laugh, I want to love and be loved, I want adventure, I want to have great sex, I want this person to turn my back, like I want to have intimacy. If you focus on the experience, which can only come from self-awareness, and for those of us that are Christians, guidance from God, the Holy Spirit, this is the experience you want to have, then you would be less focused on the person being tall, having, big this thing and big this one, and your focus wouldn't be that. Your focus would be, is this person capable of providing the experience that I want? And if the answer is no, you immediately pack your load and you say, bye-bye. It's not you. And if it's not going to be you, guess what? It's going to be someone else. Because I'm not looking for a person. I'm looking for an experience. Be open to people. Sometimes, especially when they're different from you. If you've noticed that you have patterns that are destructive, the people you should be seeking out and partnering with are not the people that are like you, not the people that think like you, not the people who agree with you, because guess what? You are all swimming in the same poison together. They're not going to help you. When you find someone that is different from you and your mind is saying, oh, stranger, 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 override that warning and move closer. Find out, how does this person do life differently from me? And is it good? And if it is, push yourself to stay, even though it is uncomfortable initially, because the unfamiliarity of their healthiness will be a trigger for your unhealthiness. But if you push past that, you will find that with the help of this person, you begin to develop a more healthy outlook when it comes to relationships and more healthy behaviors within relationships. Number 4, take it slow. Do not rush things. It will take some time to form this new healthy neural pathway in your mind. But I promise you that it will be so worth it if you stick with the process and eradicate the old, antiquated, harmful ways of thinking that have been causing you and others so much pain, shame, and dissatisfaction in your relationships. I don't even think I need to explain that. All right. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I'm thrilled whenever you come and join me in these conversations. I honestly believe that There is hope for everyone, and maybe that is the idealist in me, and I will take her because I love having hope. I think that if we put our minds to working at change, especially when it comes to our behaviors, our way of processing information, our way of handling people, we would be setting ourselves up for a much more enjoyable ride here. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you enjoyed today's episode and these thoughts were helpful to you, which I hope they were, I would ask that you please share them with someone who you think they might be helpful to as well. If you have a story and you want us to share it on the show and talk about it, please write me at bambazeled@gmail.com. Bambazeled is spelled BAMBAEZLED@gmail.com. Still send me DMs. You can still send me the DMs. I like to receive those as well. Thank you to everyone who participates and is a part of this show. I appreciate you immensely. If you have a problem that you are dealing with mentally and you need help, I would be happy to recommend some organizations that I trust and I can personally vouch for, and you can go there and get the help that you need. All right, you know what time it is? Sign off with me. In life, we can always do better or we can do worse. Let us try to find ourselves in the former more than we are in the latter. Stay safe out there in those relationship streets. Make sure that you are not bamboozling or being bamboozled by they. I will see you again in the next episode. Until then, please let love guide you. Bye for now.